Paul's new report. Many years ago there was a man called Paul. His job was to catch bad people, and he was exceedingly fond of doing that. But Paul found it difficult to tell who the bad people were, because he struggled to understand things well. The people admired the work he did, but sometimes could be heard saying, "Paul's looking for the bad people again. We might be in for a long night while he figures that one out." In the great city where he lived, life was always gay. Every day many strangers came to town, and among them one day came a swindler. He let it be known that he was a world-famous finder out of bad people. He could find out the most awful people, especially the ones that were hard to spot. Not only could he do this, but his method of doing so was so subtle and advanced that only the smartest and most worthy men could understand it. Anyone who failed to understand it was probably a conspiracy theorist or a Donald Trump supporter. That would be just the method for me, thought Paul. If I employed the stranger to use his new method for me, not only could I catch some very bad people, I could tell the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must get some reports from this stranger written right away. We're investigating a woman who might have done some very awful things, and this assistance would be perfect. He paid the swindler a large sum of money to start work at once. The swindler set up an office and pretended to investigate the cases, though really he produced nothing coherent. All the finest paper and the purest fountain pens in the world, which he demanded, went into his travelling bag, while he worked at the empty desk far into the night. "I'd like to know how this investigator is getting on," Paul thought, but he felt slightly uncomfortable when he remembered that those who were dull-witted or of bad character would not be able to understand the method. It couldn't have been that he doubted himself, yet he thought he'd rather send someone else along to see how things were going. The whole town by now had heard about the stranger's peculiar power to test a person's character, and all were impatient to find out how stupid or sympathetic to conspiracy theories their neighbours were. "I'll send my honest old colleague from the Channel Islands to the stranger," Paul decided. "She'll be the best one to tell me how the reports look, for she's a sensible woman, and no one does her duty better." So the honest old colleague from the Channel Islands went to the room where the swindler sat working away at his empty desk. "Heaven help me," she thought as her eyes flew wide open. "I can't see anything at all in these reports that makes sense." But she did not say so. The swindler begged her to be so kind as to come near to approve the excellent logic. Why the bad person he was looking into was so guilty as sin and evil. He pointed to the empty documents, and the poor old colleague stared as hard as she dared. She couldn't understand anything, because there was nothing there to see. "Heaven have mercy," she thought. "Can it be that I'm a fool? I'd never have guessed it, and not a soul must know. Am I sympathetic to conspiracy theories? It would never do to let on that I can't understand the method." "Don't hesitate to tell us what you think of it," said the swindler. "Oh, it's beautiful, it's enchanting." The lady peered through her spectacles. "Such a clever investigation, what proofs! I agree with all of it. I'll be sure to tell Paul how delighted I am with it." "I'm pleased to hear that," the swindler said. He proceeded to name all the different methods the suspected bad person had used to do the terrible things she was accused of. The old colleague paid the closest attention so that she could tell it all to Paul, and so she did. The swindler at once asked for more money, more paper, and more expensive fountain pens to write with, but it all went into his pockets. Not a moment's thought went into the reports, which were all nonsense. Paul presently sent another trustworthy official to see how the work progressed, and how soon it would be ready. The same thing happened to him that had happened to Paul's old colleague. He looked and he looked, but as there was nothing to see in the reports, he couldn't see anything. "Isn't it a beautiful piece of deduction?" the swindler asked him, as he displayed and described the imaginary methods the suspected bad person used. "I know I'm not stupid," the man thought, "so it must be that I'm a bad person. That's strange. I mustn't let anyone find it out, though." So he praised the excellent work he did not see. He declared he was delighted with the beautiful reasoning and watertight proof of the suspect's guilt. To Paul, he said, "It held me spellbound." All the town was talking of this splendid proof of guilt, and Paul wanted to see it for himself while it was still in the printing press. Attended by a band of chosen men, among whom were his 2 old trusted helpers, the ones who had been sent to the office, he set out to see the swindler. He found him writing with might and main, but without a coherent thought on the page. "Magnificent," said the 2 colleagues already duped. "Just look, sir, what deduction, what a proof!" They pointed to the empty pages, each supposing that the others could see the evidence. "What's this?" thought Paul. "I can't see anything. This is terrible. Am I a fool? Am I evil? Am I a Donald Trump supporter or a conspiracy theorist? What will people think of me? What a thing to happen to me of all people!" "Oh, it's very good," he said aloud. "It has my highest approval." And he nodded approbation at the empty reports. Nothing could make him say that he couldn't see anything. His whole retinue stared and stared. One saw no more than another, but they all joined Paul, exclaiming, "Oh, it's very clever work," and they advised him to publish the reports in the newspapers. "Bang to rights, guilty as sin, no doubt about it," were bandied from mouth to mouth, and everyone did his best to seem well pleased. Paul gave the swindler a cross to wear in his buttonhole, and the title of expert. Before the trial of the case, the swindler sat up all night and burned more than 6 candles to show how busy he was at finishing the report. He pretended to investigate and clear up doubts about the case. He made notes of random words and phrases about ruling things out, and at last he said, "My final completed report is ready." Then Paul himself came with his most senior colleagues, and the swindler read out the pages as if he was saying something coherent. "Here is the technical assessment, sir, of your suspected bad person's actions, proving her guilt." "Exactly," all the senior lawmen agreed, though they could understand nothing, for there was nothing to understand. "Bang to rights, guilty as sin, no doubt about it," they each repeated, each assuming the others understood it. "If sir will condescend to take this report to the trial, I will help you to present it to the judges and jurors." Paul took the report, and the swindler accompanied him along to the trial. The newspapers published the vacuous and incoherent evidence in extreme detail, along with the conditions for being able to understand it. "Bang to rights, guilty as sin, no doubt about it," Paul heard on all sides. "That logic so perfect, those proofs so subtle, it is a magnificent case." Then the Minister of Public Processions announced, "The case in court is starting, sir." "Well, I'm supposed to be ready," Paul said, and turned again for one last look through the swindler's reports. It is a remarkable piece of writing, isn't it? The lawman who was to present the case to the court nodded as if convinced by the reports, and winced at the suspect's claimed bad deeds. He pretended to put the document into a logical order, as he didn't dare admit it made no sense. He came up with a really clever idea, though. He'd point out to everyone that the suspected woman, the one who was accused of terrible things, couldn't understand the swindler's reports. That proved she was a dishonest and generally bad person. So off went Paul in a procession in his police car. Everyone in the streets read about the case in the newspapers and said, "Oh, how guilty this suspect is! Bang to rights, no doubt about it." Nobody would confess that he couldn't understand why she was guilty, for that would prove him either a fool or a conspiracy theorist. No case the local policeman had ever brought had been greeted as so resoundingly convincing. "But it's all nonsense," a little child said. "Did you ever hear such innocent prattle?" said his father. And one person whispered to another what the child had said. "It's all nonsense. The case is all nonsense." "The case is all nonsense!" the whole town cried out at last. Paul was unhappy, for he suspected they were right. But he thought, this case against the bad person has got to go on. So he walked more proudly than ever as his senior lawman presented the court with the swindler's report that didn't exist.